I do not feel motivated right now, but I'm also not confused. And I think that distinction matters. Because there's a phase in life that most people aren't taught how to recognize where motivation kind of disappears, but clarity remains. You still know who you are. You still know what matters. You still know what you're working towards or what you're building. But at the same time, you don't feel pushed toward it anymore. And because we live in a world that treats motivation as fuel, this phase gets mislabeled really fast. In this video, I want to talk about what it actually means when motivation disappears, how to keep functioning without forcing yourself, why trying to get motivation back usually just backfires, and how to work in a way that won't betray yourself and your nervous system. Let's start by clearing all the misreads. This is not burnout, apathy, laziness. This is not a loss of purpose. What's actually happening is that motivation, which is pressure-based energy, is shutting down. And clarity, which is essentially orientation, has not. That's why you still know what's aligned, what isn't, and generally speaking, where you're going. Or maybe even more so, what you won't go back to. What's missing now is like the internal whip. And that is not a problem. It's a transition into something truer. Let me explain. In our society, we generally tend to operate from a place of impulse, inspiration, or push, whether that's external or internal. It's not inherently a bad thing, but it's not the only way to operate. Because that's what we're so accustomed to, both internally and societally, when motivation disappears, the system panics. We panic. We mislabel. Other people panic and mislabel. We don't actually understand what it is or why it's happening. So the mind comes in and says, if I don't feel driven, I must be stuck. If I'm not excited, something's wrong with this path or with me. Or if I don't push, I'll stop. Here's the thing. Motivation was never wisdom. It was adrenaline, it was fear, it was desire, it was pressure, all wearing a very helpful costume. But eventually, as we heal and as we raise consciousness and we become more regulated as a baseline, that little entourage gets in the car and drives away and leaves us with nothing but neutral clarity. And neutrality, for many of us, especially in Western civilization, feels very uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Most people don't embody this way of being or demonstrate how to live this way. And so most of us haven't learned how to move from it or how to use it. Here's what does exist when motivation is gone: steadiness, discernment, restraint, precision, and a quiet, unfuckwithable confidence. And when you start to move from this place, you'll start to notice that you can work very productively, just not for super long stretches. You may prefer getting fewer tasks done very cleanly and correctly. You're less tolerant of inefficiency, and you may need a little bit more conscious and intentional recovery between outputs. This is not regression. Stop waiting to feel motivated before taking action. You may be waiting for a very long time. Not only that, but you're going to build pressure, anxiety-inducing pressure. We need to remember that we are now operating from a completely different type of system. And it's like comparing apples to oranges. There are simply going to be days where your body is saying no. This is also the era of understanding how wise and how strong of a communicator the body really is. And we're now fully online to listen. Another thing is over planning instead of just doing one small thing. There is power in simplicity. Lastly, judging yourself for not having momentum. All of these things reintroduce pressure. When I started this channel, I was recording like every single day, multiple times a day. I'd get a thought in my head of an idea and immediately I'd have to get the camera up. Usually that inspiration, that motivation and excitement and novelty simmers down a bit. I'm no longer jumping with excitement every day. I'm operating from this place of neutrality, this very calm, sort of clear, I know how I feel, I know where I'm at, I know what I'm working towards, I know what I'm doing, but I don't have an engine revving in the background, driving me forward. I'm just showing up. And the more that I show up without motivation, but just with this calm, quiet neutrality and discernment and respect for my body's rhythms, my output becomes more authentic, more real, more aligned. We stop asking, what do I feel like doing? And we start asking, what is the smallest, most aligned action with where I'm at right in this very moment? And that doesn't require force. For example, that could be working in short, contained windows, repeating familiar tasks instead of innovating. It could be letting consistency replace intensity, and stopping before depletion. This isn't the death of inspiration, but it's the death of inspiration as a need to move. I'm learning how to trust what I know without needing to feel compelled. And that's a lot harder than it sounds, because it removes all of the old self-control mechanisms that most people rely on. But it's also more honest. If motivation has left, but clarity hasn't, nothing is broken. You're learning how to function without adrenaline, without self-coercion, and without urgency running the system. This is much quieter work. This is slower work. This is more adult work. And it doesn't announce itself the way the old energy did. What would change if you stopped waiting to feel motivated and started respecting what you already know? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.